I think as far as influential movies and things that sort of just show me the potential of films.
What does Christopher Nolan see when he watches a film? Not entertainment, not escapism, architecture. Every frame is a blueprint, every cut a calculated decision.
And those are the kind of films that I think a lot of filmmakers, you come to film through the Hollywood blockbuster. Those are
Every sequence an equation waiting to be solved. Behind the backwards narratives and folded timelines lies something more methodical than genius. It's engineering. Nolan doesn't consume cinema, he reverse engineers it. 6 films have lived in his mind like permanent installations.
How to photograph things on film, expose a film correctly, choose the film stocks, those kind of things.
Teaching him that movies aren't just stories told in sequence. They're machines built to manipulate time, space, memory, and consciousness itself. These aren't casual influences. They're structural DNA. From Frears' fatalistic road trips to Rogue's fractured chronologies, from Lang's criminal masterminds to Oshima's cultural collisions, Nolan has spent decades studying how other directors bend reality to serve truth. He doesn't borrow techniques. He deconstructs them, rebuilds them, makes them stronger. This isn't about inspiration anymore. It's about precision. 6 directors taught Nolan that cinema's greatest power isn't showing us what happened, but controlling how we experience it happening. Time as a weapon, memory as landscape, narrative as physics. Here are the 6 films that taught Christopher Nolan how to build impossible things from moving pictures, and why every puzzle box he's constructed since has been an attempt to solve the riddles they first posed. Each one a masterclass in turning technical innovation into emotional devastation. 6. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, 1983. Oshima didn't make a war film. He made a film about what war reveals. When Nolan discovered Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, he found something rarer than great cinema.
The essence of the character. You've got a character who has to be, she's the newcomer to the team, and so she's the character the audience can identify with as they explore the world.
He found restraint in the face of impossible circumstances. A Japanese prison camp became a laboratory for examining honor, sacrifice, and the brutal mathematics of human dignity. This wasn't about good versus evil. It was about competing definitions of honor colliding in confined space. Major Celliers, played with haunting stillness by David Bowie, became Nolan's template for characters who accept their fate with quiet defiance. The film's exploration of cultural misunderstanding, where every gesture carries the weight of entire civilizations, taught Nolan that the most powerful conflicts aren't physical, they're philosophical. Oshima's visual restraint, those long takes that let tension build naturally, influenced Nolan's preference for earned emotion over manufactured spectacle. The film never rushes toward its climax. It lets inevitability do the work. Characters reveal themselves through small acts of rebellion and unexpected mercy, showing Nolan that the most profound moments happen in silence. The prison camp's rigid hierarchy became a model for Nolan's later explorations of systems under pressure. Whether it's a heist crew, a space mission, or a war operation, Nolan learned from Oshima that extreme circumstances reveal not just individual character, but the codes we live by. Merry Christmas. Mr. Lawrence showed Nolan that the most devastating stories aren't about survival. They're about maintaining your humanity when the world demands you abandon it. 5. Bad Timing, 1980. Rogue didn't tell a love story. He performed surgery on time itself. When Nolan first encountered bad timing, he wasn't just watching a relationship dissolve.
Feel the sincerity of the intention there to make a great film. And we did the same thing with this film. It did feel like a risk because, to a certain extent, with Batman,
He was witnessing the birth of his own obsession with non-linear narrative. Past, present, and memory collided like particles in an emotional accelerator, creating something that felt less like cinema and more like consciousness itself.
You don't want to face the things I want to talk about. I daren't talk.
Oh, honey. Come sit down.
This was storytelling as archaeology. Rogue excavated the ruins of a toxic relationship by jumping between moments of passion, violence, and aftermath without warning or explanation. The film's fractured structure taught Nolan that chronology wasn't sacred. It was just another tool, like lighting or music, to be manipulated in service of deeper truth. The intercutting between hospital emergency room and romantic flashbacks became Nolan's masterclass in emotional geography. How memory distorts sequence, how guilt reshapes the past, how love and destruction occupy the same psychological space. Art Garfunkel's psychologist, obsessed and calculating, prefigures every Nolan protagonist who tries to control the uncontrollable through intellectual precision. Rogue's editing rhythms, those jarring cuts that mirror the way trauma fragments experience, influenced everything from Memento's reverse structure to Inception's layered timelines. The film proved that the most honest way to examine human relationships wasn't through linear progression, but through the chaotic, repetitive, contradictory way memory actually works. Bad Timing taught Nolan that narrative structure isn't just technique, it's psychology made visible. Sometimes the only way to understand what happened is to experience it the way the mind remembers it. 4. The Testament of Dr. Mabuse, 1933. Lang didn't create a villain. He engineered a system of evil. When Nolan discovered the Testament of Dr. Mabuse, he found the blueprint for every complex antagonist he would ever create.
Herr Kommissar, so melden Sie sich doch Gottes Willen.
This wasn't just German expressionism. This was criminal architecture, a master plan that continued executing itself even after its architect had been removed from the board.
Theoretical possibility of infinite progression. In some areas, there is a limit that's reached.
Mabuse, locked away in an asylum but still orchestrating chaos through hypnotic influence and meticulous planning, became Nolan's template for villains who think 3 moves ahead of everyone else. The film's central conceit, that ideas can be more dangerous than their creators, would echo through every Nolan film featuring masterminds like the Joker, Bane, or even Dom Cobb's projections of his wife. Lang's visual language, those sharp angles and deep shadows that turn ordinary spaces into psychological mazes, taught Nolan that cinematography could be conspiratorial. Every frame felt calculated, deliberate, part of some larger design. The film's geometric compositions influenced everything from the folding Paris streets in Inception to the brutal concrete landscapes of the Dark Knight trilogy. But deeper than technique, Mabuse taught Nolan about the seductive power of pure intellect divorced from morality. The villain wasn't physically imposing. He was conceptually unstoppable. His crimes weren't random violence, but elaborate puzzles designed to prove his intellectual superiority over society's systems. The film's exploration of how criminal genius can outlive its creator, continuing to corrupt and influence long after the original mind has been neutralized, became central to Nolan's understanding of how ideas propagate and multiply. Lang showed Nolan that the most terrifying antagonists don't just commit crimes, they redesign reality itself. 3. The Thin Red Line, 1998. Malick didn't make a war film, he made war philosophical. When Nolan encountered the Thin Red Line,
On every film. Oppenheimer, somebody I'd been interested in a long time, didn't know that much about the specifics of his story.
he discovered something that would fundamentally reshape his approach to action sequences. This wasn't combat as spectacle. This was violence as meditation, death as natural process, warfare as the ultimate collision between human consciousness and indifferent nature.
Stay down. Pledge. I'll call. Down to data.
Malick's treatment of the Battle of Guadalcanal became Nolan's masterclass in finding meaning within chaos. Multiple perspectives, overlapping voiceovers, characters questioning their own existence, while bullets flew around them. The film taught Nolan that the most honest way to depict extreme circumstances wasn't through adrenaline, but through contemplation. How do you maintain your humanity when civilization collapses? What separates us from animals when survival is the only law? The film's visual poetry, those shots of tall grass swaying while men died beneath it, influenced Nolan's understanding that nature doesn't care about human drama. It simply continues. This indifference became central to Nolan's cosmic perspective in films like Interstellar, where the universe operates according to physics, not human need. Malick's ensemble approach, revealing character through internal monologue rather than external action, taught Nolan that war films could be intimate despite their epic scope. Each soldier carried his own philosophical framework, his own way of processing the incomprehensible. The film's stream of consciousness structure showed Nolan how multiple timelines could exist within a single narrative without fracturing it. The thin red line proved to Nolan that action sequences could be prayer, that violence could reveal rather than conceal the depths of human nature. Malick turned carnage into a cathedral, showing Nolan that even destruction could serve transcendence. 2. 12 Angry Men, 1957. Lumet didn't direct a courtroom drama. He built a pressure cooker for ideas. When Nolan first encountered 12 Angry Men, he wasn't just watching 12 men debate a verdict. He was witnessing the perfect demonstration of how spatial constraints could amplify psychological tension. One room, real time, escalating stakes. This became Nolan's template for turning limitation into advantage. The film's genius wasn't in its message about justice, but in its mechanics of persuasion. How reasonable doubt spreads like infection through a closed system.
Understandable, tactile imagery from those equations. They were constantly surprising. Spoke to the maxim that, truth can be stranger than...
How individual prejudices reveal themselves under pressure. How truth emerges not through revelation, but through methodical examination of evidence. Every Nolan film since has been, at its core, an investigation where characters piece together fragments of larger puzzles. Lumet's visual progression, gradually tightening the frame as tension mounted, taught Nolan that cinematography could be claustrophobic without being static. The room never changed, but the way we saw it transformed completely. Wide shots became close-ups. Comfortable spaces became suffocating chambers. Nolan learned that psychological pressure could be made physically visible through lens choice and composition. The film's real-time structure influenced everything from Dunkirk's ticking clock to the interrogation sequences in The Dark Knight. Nolan discovered that artificial time constraints don't just create suspense, they reveal character. People show their true nature when escape becomes impossible. Most importantly, 12 Angry Men taught Nolan that intellectual engagement could be as thrilling as physical action. Watching Henry Fonda systematically dismantle assumptions and expose logical fallacies became Nolan's blueprint for protagonists who solve problems through thinking rather than fighting. The film proved that minds in conflict could generate more electricity than any explosion. 1. The Hit, 1984. Some films chase death. Others let death do the chasing. When Nolan discovered The Hit, he found something that would become his directorial obsession. Not just a crime film, but a meditation on fate, acceptance, and the strange dignity that comes from knowing your story's end before it arrives.
Audiences understanding things before you're explaining them, the audience gets very frustrated in a different way.
Terrence Stamp's Willie Parker, the ex-gangster who spent 10 years in Spanish exile waiting for his inevitable execution, became Nolan's template for characters who understand that fighting destiny is less important than facing it with grace.
Here's something I read once, Myra. Parker, Mr. Braddock.
The film's road movie structure, three men driving toward a predetermined conclusion, taught Nolan that linear narrative could feel circular when every mile traveled brings you closer to fate's completion. Stephen Frears's restrained direction influenced Nolan's preference for understatement over melodrama. No theatrical death scenes, no last-minute reversals, just the slow, methodical approach of consequence. The film's Spanish landscapes, sun-bleached and eternal, showed Nolan that even genre pieces could achieve philosophical weight through visual poetry and patient character development. The Hit's exploration of how different men face mortality, from Willie's Zen-like acceptance to his captor's professional detachment, prefigured every Nolan protagonist who must reconcile intellectual understanding with emotional reality. The film proved that the most suspenseful stories aren't about whether something will happen, but about how people behave when they know it must. Nolan doesn't collect films. He collects blueprints for bending reality. These 6 directors taught him that cinema's greatest power isn't showing what happened, but engineering how we experience it. 6 templates. 1 architectural vision, time reconstructed frame by frame.